Okay, greetings and welcome to Relationships Unfiltered, a podcast about relationships, love, lifestyle, passion, sex, and a whole bunch more. I'm your host here, Rashad Bakir, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, uh, YouTube channel at RB Media 323 for the video broadcast of this program. As well, to remind you folks, this program is intended for adult audiences and not intended for younger folks with the themes and contents that we do discuss here. So, you know. So, what are we going to discuss today? Well, I'm going to get into signals that you're in a healthy relationship. Okay. Now, at first glance at that, I was reading an article, matter of fact, on this, some signs and signals of stuff that you might be in. And my takeaways from this article that I read on Yahoo recently, and really in the themes that they were kind of mentioning, come in two forms to me. They come in one form whereby the person for whom you are getting into a relation with or persons, from the outset, you should know that. So there's two components that I look at from get go when it comes to people in or dealing with unhealthy situations, circumstances, etc., as related to an unhealthy relationship. And that starts from the beginning. Because, first of all, you either should know or have some idea of the type of person that you're dealing with. Okay. And you can get a sixth sense about that from the outset, just in the way they are, their mannerisms, their characteristics, and all those sorts of things. But there should be also a sort of filtering and process that you might go through with a person. And generally, people do, sometimes that happens right at the first beginning. You either get a feel of chemistry for the person or you don't, with your interests. Therefore, you're nipping it in the bud from the start. So you're not even getting to these other levels as far as a relationship goes. The second thing would be that have gotten into a relationship that's already established, and that's a little more tricky, okay? Because now things are already developed, they're normalized, and you either will recognize signals that might be there that would be what we're terming today as red flags and triggers and these sorts of things, or you would might overlook certain things compatible to that, or you might they might just become so normalized that you don't recognize them. And then when you're in it, as I'm going to go into these relationships, it's very hard to sort of unpeel the onion, so to speak, because now things have already been folded in the relationship, and these are the dynamics that we get into where we're dealing with domestic violence situations as well too, why people stay stuck in those type of dynamics. Now, again, unhealthy relationships, there are some very clear, very obvious signs that point to that from the outset. But this article is more looking at the more nuanced types of things. And one thing very importantly that I want to get into when we talk about this stuff, again, as related to it, is with regard to dysfunctional stuff. You know, lots of us are dysfunctional in our ways, in our things that we deal with, because we are social creatures and we absorb things. Additionally, the fact that when we go from one relationship to the next, we are also carrying certain baggage from one relationship to the next. So everything pretty much starts with us, as I was mentioning with the effective communication episode that I did, talking about those types of things. Similarly, when we look at the unhealthy signs, certainly it's always very good for us to have an outside view, and certainly getting someone else's opinion that you really trust, care about, etc., come into play. So there were a few things that come in, and I'm looking at it from the lens of how we formulate to get into these situations. We don't certainly go look for things that are unhealthy. Most people, don't, at least they're not looking for an unhealthy relationship. They want a very healthy relationship, but sometimes it's just what our standards are with regard to that. And if you have a certain set of standards, then you certainly, like I said, will filter those things and minimize. Okay, and additionally, it gets to what criteria are we setting for things that we would highlight, flag, red flag stuff that might not necessarily be the case. So, and that's kind of like an apples to oranges. That's sort of each to their own type of thing, because what might be seen as a red flag for one person might not be seen as a red flag, and they might not. Neither one of them might not even be real red flags. It's just what we are internalizing as a red flag, and again, sometimes that starts with our own selves. It was mentioned, and I am gonna touch on a few of these different topics that I read in this article that I want to highlight about things that sort of fit into not so much just unhealthy, but it's just problematic okay, for relationships more so than the term unhealthy, because that can go in a lot of different directions. So problematic, for one, was one of the things that was mentioned, was talking about if, and this is more so heterosexual relationships, just for the audience clarity, not to disparage anyone else out there. And again, this is the open inclusive show, but the points that we're applying to can apply with anybody, but we're just being specific to the heterosexual dynamic, just to be clear. Okay, so don't get offended. Why are you just talking about it like that? I mean, it can just flip it and make it fit to whatever situation you're in, whether you're in an LGBTQ relationship, whether you're in a poly relationship, whatever the case is that works for you, just flip it to that. Now, saying that, so the woman was stating about her husband or her man being too close to his mom. Okay. Now, again, that's not necessarily unhealthy on the surface of that. Being too close to his mom, you got to first take that part of it. Okay. That can be a good thing. That can be a thing where generally, speaking, because what it does is, first of all, it allows the woman, the person for whom the man is with, to see how does that man relate and interact with his mother and women in general. So it gives you an idea, if he's treating her a certain way, a pattern to which might be similar to how he will treat you. Not in all cases, but in the majority. Okay, because we do know there's some outliers where a guy can be sweet as a peach to his mother and Ivan the Terrible to you. Okay, so we're not talking about that per se. Those are some clear, horrendous, unhealthy situations. We're not talking about that. We're just talking pretty much the mainstream. Okay, but I'll touch on some of those unhealthy parts that come into play with all that stuff. But right now, just focus on the positive parts of it first. So other aspects that are positive, like I said, will be the first of all, the guy, he's showing you his mother. If he's bringing you to his mother and presenting you to, so that's a very good thing. So he's bringing you into the fold of this close relationship that he already has with his mother, which is important to him. So you're seeing a side of him that he cares about, and he cares about with you, that you can see other sides of him as well too. So those are really two standout characteristics that are positive of a man having a close relationship to his mom. Thirdly is the fact that lots of guys are close to their mothers. Okay. So, I mean, in general, most guys are close to their mother. You're not going to, close, close, close. Now, some are close, 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 and then some are just close. But they have a certain affinity, a certain love, certainly, towards their mothers. And that should not be seen automatically as a negative and as certainly as a red flag and all this other stuff. That might be more of a reflection of the woman if she comes in with a type of jealousy aspect to it. Then again, that needs to be looked at and examined. On the flip side, now so I highlighted just those main three just to kind of work with those, because again, in general, most times a man being close to his mom, just to kind of close that positive part out, is a good thing. Okay. And it's just a matter of you understanding the dynamics that he has with his mother. Okay. So that again starts with a conversation and effective communication. So you can get that understanding and know what you're stepping into. Now, once you're in it and the relationship and so forth, and then if this is where it gets kind of going off the ledge a little bit, if that relationship is non-inclusive to you, now you're talking about some really unhealthy aspects, because that's going to affect your relationship with him. If he particularly is doing things with his mom that he should be doing with you, and I'm not talking about the dirty business, I'm just saying in general, he's doing things. If he's taking her places and spending more time with her, and things of that nature, and preferring her or prioritizing her more so than you, then yes. But again, it falls back into a conversation about expectations and understanding that you must have, which centers around effective communication. So that is key number one, is that you have to establish that understanding through effective communication. So the second part to the negative obviously would be if the mom now is intruding in your relationship. Okay, so if she's a busybody in your business, then yes, that needs to be checked. That needs to have a conversation. Now, for the woman, my suggestion would be is you go through him. You don't go straight to her and start telling her to stay out your business and this and that and the other. That's not going to turn out to be a good thing. Always go to him and have him go tell her to set that straight. So let him deal with that. And then you all, either the three of you or however many folks is in the party, have that sit down conversation, if necessary. But again, there's steps in all this stuff. Your understanding of the dynamic of the relationship that he has, and understanding his mom's personality, which again, even before you meet her, you can question him about his mother and particularly how has she treated his past girlfriends, relationships, and so forth, the people in his past relationships. So you have to do your own homework. In other words, you really need to be investigative, proactive, ask questions firsthand, so you can have an understanding, a profile to what and who his mom is and how that relationship is, and so forth. And then you have something to compare it to at that point. So if he's telling you, oh, my mom is sweet and she does this and that and all the other, and then she's like the evil witch to you, then you have something. Wait a minute, this is not adding up. Why is she like saying he's telling me this and she's like this? And then again, it goes back to you and him having this conversation and pointing these things out. And we all know in the dynamics of couples that one of the in-laws is not necessarily going to like the spouse, the partner of their son, daughter, whatever. They're sometimes those things are just as they are. And in those cases, what I again would suggest is that there be as minimal contact, communication, interaction as possible until it can foster itself better. Because sometimes it needs a certain thing. Because again, another part of that unhealthy dynamic of the son being too close to his mom is that she will maybe have a favor. You know, sometimes you step into things and his previous relationship partner, person, woman, whoever, was more likable to her, the mom, than you coming in. It's just like, again, the first wife and then the next wife coming in, the second wife, you know, and the mom might be partial to the first wife because maybe she's the mother of the kids or whatever the situation is. She has a favor, and that's again one of those things that's part of the dynamics of human beings, is that we have preferences and so forth. So she might have a sort of prejudicial preference for his previous partner before you. And so again, this is where you have to do a little bit more investigations and understanding the dynamics of which you stepping into. You know, that's pretty much how I look at that with regard to that. Now, there's something else that I want to tackle under this umbrella of the dynamics of the son and the mom relationships, and I'm going to expand it as well too. And that is a term that I come up with as relating to what I term as sunsbins. Okay, sunsbins. Okay, now sunsbins refers to the role that the son plays as if he is the husband to his mother. Okay, you got that? Now, and I'm not talking about incest per se, but it's sort of non-sexual incest in a way, if you want to say it like that, describe it that way, because the son is either has grown up this way because his mom, you know, could have been single mom or widowed or whatever case is, but and you know he feels that role to her as a partner, as a companion, particularly. And, you know, certainly he might do things around the house as if he were the man of the house, because a lot of the times that's what happens when young boys are being raised by their mothers. They step into this place as if they are the husband. They might have to go work early, you know, and that be a provider in the household. They're going to do all of those sort of manly duties, husbandry duties, and so forth. So that dynamic is essentially as if the son is the husband role. So I call that the sunsbins. Okay, I'm going to do a whole episode on sunsbins, and then the other thing that I have on the flip side with women and daughters is daughter wives. So that again, that's the comparable to what the son does, but it's just the daughter in their relationship to the father. Similarly, again, if they are, if the father is a single dad raising daughter and that type of thing, but not just that, he can have the wife could be there, the wife and the mother could be in the household under him, but she might be just incapable of fulfilling certain needs and roles. So the daughter steps into that, or the father sort of depends upon her, or leans into that bond builds up to where the daughter is in that placeholder. So I'm going to do a whole episode on that alone. So you folks be sure to tune in to that coming here, because I'm going to drop some good stuff in relation to that, because like I said, this is a Relationships Unfiltered show. And like I told you, we go into it deep and heavy in a lot of these different issues. And so forth. And this is one of them. This is something that's out there that's almost normalized in a way when you look at it, okay? Because it's just some real stuff going on with that part that I have come to with that description. Now let's go to a couple of other things that was mentioned that I want to just again highlight on briefly, which which gets into junior politics, for example, because this is another new phenomenon in the dynamics of relationships. So again, talking about unhealthy, well, it becomes unhealthy if one partner has this sort of fixed animus towards a person's political, social, religious beliefs or whatever that are opposite to you. Now, certainly there are many couples who do not agree on everything, and you're not going to find that most anywhere where you're going to totally agree on everything, your politics, your religion, beliefs, or whatever, and all these sorts of things. And there is this thing which I just talked about with dealing with interracial relationships, that you have opposites attract. So it's okay for people of opposite perspectives to work together, be together, and they can be successful and have a healthy relationship as long as, again, there's the trust and respect there. Okay. But the gender politics today is, there's the line in the sand for a lot of, particularly women. Now, I don't want to sound like I am sexist and jumping on women about this, but from what we see in the evidence of what's out there, a lot of the projection is coming from more so women than it is men. Men, generally speaking, are flexible to women, because again, it goes back to what I've said about men use love to get sex while women use sex to get love. And so the dynamic of men is that they was the easiest road pathway to get what they want and a companion, and generally that involves in a relationship sex. So being very real with that. And so they are not as lying in the sand over politics because for a lot of men, okay, I'm going to just say it this way, having a nice, beautiful looking woman matters more to them than what her politics is. So he'll take her, even if he don't like her politics. If she's a nice looking, beautiful woman, he'll deal with that. Okay. To a degree, of course, as long as he can deal with it, he will deal with it. Okay. Now, if it becomes unbearable for him, then of course he's going to probably make some other decisions and stuff. But generally speaking, because many men, what do the men complain about? Again, going back to what I had mentioned again in the first episode, with Men Are From Mars and Women From Venus, what do men complain about? That she nags, that she's trying to be controlled. So men are already going into many relationships under that assumption with women that she might do certain things that might be somewhat annoying to him. But for most men, we have to develop a type of tolerance to. So, because at the end of the day, those small battles aren't worth the fight a lot of times. So we can overlook certain things with women, even when they're nagging and so forth. And you see some couples like that, they go at each other, but they love each other to death. So it's just those dynamics that come into play with that. So when we talk about the gender politics, it's very nuanced. And yes, if you are staunch about your politics, particularly women, then you need to run in those circles where folks have similar political beliefs. Don't go looking for somebody on these other characteristics and then their politics is different if that is your deal breaker. Okay, if that's your deal breaker, then again, you need to reevaluate some things with that in what's your priority, that of characteristic what you're looking for. As I mentioned, folks, like I said, a lot of themes, topics come up that I'm going to be covering in future shows. And one of them, again, is going to be on not only the gender politics, which I just mentioned earlier, not only on the husbands and daughter wives that I just mentioned in order, but again, what do women look for in a relationship? So that's going to be a near upcoming show that I'm going to be doing. So stay tuned on that. What are women looking for? So I've been putting out surveys to that, and I'll have a survey soon posted up in my link on my YouTube channel. So folks, if they want to jump in on that and answer that and share some things, then that'll be available. So I've been out and about, like I mentioned before. I talked to many of people with regard to relationships. This is where my primary source comes from: talking to real people, in person, online, on the phone. However, I can communicate with people to get feedback, to get their responses to the questions and the topics and things that I cover. Now, let me move on to a couple more of these and wrap this up in this segment. So, another one here, which is, again, goes into, okay, from get go, is that women's expectation. What are you looking for? So, again, in other words, them trying to convince themselves that this is a good guy when he may not be, well, in their mind. So they're trying to convince a guy who, again, based on whatever, based on his looks, based on his income level, his employment, or whatever the situation is, that she just, he's okay, he's good for right now, kind of deal. And then if something comes along better, then they might jump ship and go with the next guy, kind of thing. And we see this certainly with men. And again, I'm not trying to jump on women with all these things, but the article was mostly from the women's side. So just to point that out, okay? And I'll put the link up in my YouTube channel so you folks can read it yourself. But if you so choose, the thing is that for men, no, we don't look at the ideal of what our expectations are so high with women that then we think we're settling. Okay, for women, their standard is they think they might be settling because they have this ideal. Generally speaking, gotta clarify some things. Generally speaking, of what type of lifestyle do they want for themselves? And I'm particularly talking about this 21st century woman. Like I said, I'm gonna have this as a talking point on a future show. Like I said, what do these modern women want? And because a lot of them are left out there, they single and unattached and looking, and they're trying to figure out, well, why don't they have somebody? So and the numbers are indicating to that we're going to be heading toward this singles, a large number of single people, and so forth. There's already a large number of single people, but that number and percentage is ever increasing because the divorce rate is going down, but there's less marriages. Okay, so it's generally being at about a 50% clip, but it's going down. And then you look at, well, less people are getting married, so there's less numbers to that. So the percentages might look again augmented because you have less folks getting married. You have more people staying together, living together, and being as couples, but they're not getting married. And that data point doesn't count with a divorce rate because they're already not married from get-go. So women, if your standard is for something and then you feel like you're going to be settling, okay, then is that that's a signal of an unhealthy relationship? When you already know going in, if the guy doesn't meet your expectation, that's more of, again, a characteristic of you than it is for the guy, because the guy might just be happy he have a nice looking woman, or whatever the case is with that. He might not be looking at it the same way. So if your standard, and then on top of that, let me add that, do you, as the person, I'm not even going to just say the woman, because this is both genders, okay? Do you meet the standard to which you seeking, okay? And this is a whole nother show too. Again, this topic alone is another show. Are you what you seek? Do you mirror that? Because that is very, very important, is that you not just have these set standards and set expectations when you don't meet that yourself. If you're looking for a rich guy, a millionaire, a ball player, or whatever, athlete, entertainer, or something of that, high standard, again, and all that stuff, then do you match to that? Are you, at least, if you don't have to be a millionaire, but at least are you making high income? Or, if you want somebody who's smart, intelligent, and highly educated, do you meet to that standard? And these sorts of things. So you mirror what you're looking for? Now, I'm not talking about mirroring in the sense of marrying yourself, and there's some folks out there who do that too. Again, that's another show as well. The sologamy, okay, that's a term I had to introduce some folks to. Sologamy, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about the fact that, do you complement what you're seeking? And oftentimes, again, not to sound sexist here, ladies, but we do see many occasions where the women's standard is a lot higher. It's like the Cinderella story stuff. Okay. The woman can be a village girl, peasant girl. And as long as that Prince Charming comes along and he sees something in her beautiful, then she can level up what is called hypergamy. Okay. She can move up in status. That more often is the case with women than it is with men. Very few cases, times that you see where the woman is already of high standard and status, and she's marrying, some working class guy, and so forth. You don't see that too often. Okay, again, not too often. I know and I recognize and I acknowledge that it happens, but it's in comparison to the man being high status and marrying a village, that you're gonna see much more, almost 3 times to 1, versus a woman of high status marrying a guy whose status is lower, and social economic situation particularly is lower than hers. Okay, and those factors kick in and a lot, as it relates to the success and non-success of those types of relationships and so forth. But again, when we talk about signals of unhealthy relationships, there's a lot of different dynamics that go into that. There's not a one size fits all to it. It applies in so many different ways. I mean, there's some very clear things like I talked about. If someone abusing you, threatening you, attempting to assassinate you, and all this other stuff, then yes, you better get up out of that situation, or something, make some changes or something. However, the very nuanced things and things that we, again, in this society today, look at as triggers, look at as gaslighting, and look at it all these types of things. Those are very much nuanced, and again, sometimes what happens is you can send false flags to stuff. It can be a misinterpretation of something, and then sometimes, like I said, you get out of a situation and then you think you're going for greener pastures, and you might be looking back and say, man, maybe that situation wasn't as bad as I thought it was, compared to what I might be stepping into next. Because sometimes you might step into something else thinking grass is greener, and it's maybe not as bad as you think. And particularly, when we're talking about especially nonsensical, petty things, idiosyncrasies, things that we might complain about. And that's again where we kind of going down a rabbit hole of just things that just don't even make any sense. Like I said, we're dealing with problems to things, symptoms of things that are problems, not necessarily true unhealthy causes of stuff. And those two things are very different, and that's a part of what we have in this climate today. Is there's a misreading, a misinterpretation as related to what is true signals of an unhealthy type of relationship, as opposed to just things that normal relationships go through that you have to work through. Your differences, because again, particularly if you're going into a cohabitating situation to living together, then you have to figure out each other's living behaviors and standards and all those sorts of things, because it's quite different when you're dating, you have your own place, but then once you come into a shared space, then you're going to learn a lot more about that person that you didn't know on the daily with them. If you haven't learned that already, that will be different. And even if even if you're just sharing temporary space, it's different than on the day. It's different if you just being with somebody a day or couple days or a week versus living with them months, and things that you might see that you overlooked will come much more noticeable with the person. And then it's in a situation where, again, it's going to be some signals of stuff, especially if it's their hygiene or whatever that really annoys you about them. And this is where, for relationships where people, again, are already in it, as I mentioned from the outset, and they're looking at these things relative to unhealthy components that really damage that relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here on that. And I think I covered pretty much a lot of good, interesting things as it relates to signals of an unhealthy relationship, which will, again, like I said, focus to the two primary things that you should be aware of, everybody. And that is, first, from the get-go, understanding of a few things. One, yourself and your own baggage that you're bringing in, which could compound some of those unhealthy attributes. But also, once you step into a relationship with somebody, it's a lot more nuanced in terms to the unhealthy things that might already be built in, and signals that you might miss, and differentiating, again, what is truly unhealthy, dysfunctional situations and characteristics and behaviors and all those sorts of things, versus just things that are just part of normal relationship dynamics, and solving that. And again, having effective communication to address it and correct it or fix it when necessary. So, like I said, every person needs to be proactive, okay, about their relationship. If you sit passively, then you fall into that where you get in some situations that's going to be a lot harder to get out of than you think. So and then you have to have that and ask questions. Like I said, be inquisitive, be informative, be investigative of things, but at the same time, don't try to put too much into stuff unnecessarily. That's why you always want to get feedback with other people. As much as possible, have a confidant. That's a good, healthy thing. As I was mentioning about the son having a strong relationship with the mother, and it can be the same way with the mother, with the woman having a strong relationship with her father, or having a strong relationship with her mother, whoever the parent is. Generally speaking, those should be taken as very good things. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Was able to get some understanding, get some things that you were able to peel off in that. If you're dealing with some of these issues, I'm going to be revisiting this topic in future shows. So I do appreciate you listening in, and I will check in with you folks next time. And until then, we'll see you. Relationships Unfiltered.